welcome to this webinar. My name is Tineke Jacobs, and I have been working on this project ever since it started in March 2022. The project is coordinated by Professor Dr. Chanor Balsari, who has been guiding all of the project partners in their work on gender diversity on corporate boards. You can see the logos of the partners at the bottom of the slide. The Turkish Dokuz Eylül University has taken on the coordinating role, and the partners are Bursa Uludağ University, also from Turkey, the University of León in Spain, Odyssey University of Applied Sciences in Belgium, where I'm from, At Work Solutions in the Netherlands, and Vytautas Magnus University in Lithuania. I would like to start by asking you all this question. What are your expectations of this webinar? And what are you hoping to learn? So please feel free to share your first thoughts in the chat. I'm very curious to why you thought, oh yes, this is the webinar for me. Of course, me and the coordinator and all the partners know why gender diversity on corporate boards is a very important topic, but we are also very curious as to why you are here and what you are trying to learn by attending this webinar. I don't see anything appearing yet in the chat, but I will give you some time to let us all know why you think this webinar would be of great value to you as a board member, as a researcher. Okay, thank you, Jose Oliver, for your input. You want to learn more about a current topic such as gender diversity. It is indeed very a trend, really, to focus on gender diversity. That means how to change the mindsets towards a more diverse society in corporate boards. That's indeed a really good question or issue to want to focus on. Okay, we also have a PhD student here in management. Very interesting, Anna. Ileana is looking for tools and ways to improve gender diversity, for instance, sponsorship, training, and flexibility, and so on. Very interesting topics. Let's move on to the agenda. You can still add more in the chat if you want, but let's now move on to the agenda. First of all, Professor Dr. Chanor Balsari was supposed to illustrate our motivation behind the project.
Hello, Tineke, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Seychil.
Okay, I'm just checking the voice, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So yes, instead of Chanor, if I understood well, Seychil will be taking over soon to illustrate our motivation behind the project and why we found that this is a topic we should be working on and a topic that is worth focusing on. She will then move on to explain the method we have used to gather our data. And next I will take over and share some results with you. I will show you the ebook that we have created and where you can find it to read it yourself, of course. Now I will give the floor to Seychil, who has been working on this project. Thank you, Seychil.
Now, we first like to introduce you our motivation in the project. Of course, there are many organizations and many researchers that are currently working on gender diversity on corporate boards. However, our issue, our focus is at the decision-making part of women in the corporate boards. Because when we searched the literature and when we actually made literature review and we had 2 other research papers on the topic, we saw that, yes, the number of women was raising by mandatory regulations. However, that doesn't mean that women are already taking in part in decision-making process. And we called it woman voice. What we meant by woman voice was how woman was actually in the decision-making process of the companies, of the boards. Now, we focused on corporate governance literature, and when we reviewed corporate governance literature, we had two theories as agency theory and stakeholder theory, and we focused on corporate governance mechanisms. And board was usually in the literature was called as the most important mechanism in corporate governance. And many regulations from capital markets boards in all over the world was actually mainly regarding to the board. And when you look at the rankings of corporate governance indexes, rankings of sustainability, you also see that weighing board is more than the other mechanisms. That is why we actually focused on board. However, we didn't miss the other parts, like, for example, stakeholders engagement, and executive incentives, compensation. In our project, we are covering all of them, focusing mostly on board and external mechanisms such as regulations, as mandatory regulations, or NGOs, for example, or financial markets, are also in our focus too. I think Çağnur is right now, I can hear you. I can hear you. So would you like to continue?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I was talking about corporate governance mechanisms, but I think we can go past this slide, Tineke. We can go to the other slide.
Yes.
Yes, and maybe Çağnur Hoca can talk from here.
Thank you very much, Seçil. We had a technical problem, but we solved it. So, well, within the theory, when we talk about the agency theory and its mechanisms, one of the most important mechanisms over here is board and how you form the corporate board, because it is what puts what is in between the shareholders or stakeholders and the management of the company. So when we have the board made up of enough diversity and with an independent point of view, that board can create a vision for the company, and at the same time it can direct the management and monitor the management, which is one of the most important job of the board. But we cannot view it only as a monitoring mechanism, but one of the very important parts is to create a vision for the company, to work on the strategic planning of the company. So for those, you need different diverse ideas and how people view the company and where do you want to go as a company. So agency theory suggests that if the board is diverse and if the board members are independent board members, which are coming from different areas, not bound to become part of the management, or not only a person that's very closely linked to one of the shareholders, like family ownership type of companies. So we need that type of a board structure according to the theory. So in the boards, what our project is aiming on is the woman on board. We are just thinking about, don't think about it only as women, because what applies in this project applies to all types of diversity. We chose one as a research topic and studied that. But the results are applicable to all different types of diversity, meaning gender diversity, the age diversity, education, generational diversity, ethnicity diversity. So we can think about all different parts. But we chose to work on specifically one of them. And if you increase that diversity in the board, then what will happen? The board will be working better and giving better direction to the company and providing better monitoring and more openness. And that is going to lower the cost of capital and lower the information asymmetry between the stakeholders and shareholders and the company. And if you can lower the cost of capital, then firm value will increase. And if the firm values of the firms increase, then we will have better economic and social welfare. So that is the idea, the theoretical idea behind the corporate governance mechanism. The second theory that we have been working that is related to this issue is the stakeholder management or engagement theory. For companies, for many years, the economists thought that the only goal of the company is to make profits and increase the firm value. But with the sustainability issues, we have started to think about how companies need to focus on their stakeholders instead of stockholders. So these stakeholders are who are affected by the company objectives. So it could be the customers, the employees, but it could also be the community that the company is serving or located, the environment. All of these are created, all the NGOs, they create a stakeholder base. And companies needs to think about how they will create a dialogue between their stakeholders and how they will contribute to the sustainable developments in a way. So that's the other theory that touches on this topic. Yeah, according to the stakeholder theory, again, if you increase women or diversity on the corporate board, you will, the prediction is that you are going to have more corporate social responsibility projects, you are more in touch with all your stakeholders, and firm sustainability performance is going to be affected positively from that. And if the firms do that, then we are going to achieve a sustainable development in the world. So that is the prediction of the stakeholder theory. When we think about board diversity, so that's our main focus, and we view that in two ways. One, number. So you want to increase the number of people from diverse backgrounds or diversity in the board. Second, you want to increase the voice of these people. What do we mean by that is maybe I don't know if you have ever felt that, which I have lived by myself, like you enter a room and you are the only woman in a full room of men. Or think about it in this way. You are, 18 years old and you enter into a meeting and everybody is over 40. Okay. So it is hard in those situations to talk and give your views on the topics because you feel like an outsider. So what we mean by voice is just not putting these people on the board, but making it enough comfortable for them so that they will be able to share their views and they will be able to contribute to the company. So I think that is the most important part of our project. I'll tell you why, because there are a lot of people or a lot of organizations and NGOs that are working to increase the number. But numbers does not mean a lot if you cannot increase the voice over there. Yeah, if you look into literature over here, what we see is when you increase the number of women on board, or if you put quotas, mostly the effect is positive in corporate performance. But what type of performance? These are some of the literature that we looked at. Like it says, if you increase the women on board, financial reporting quality increases. So that means the companies are becoming more open and their financial reporting processes becomes better. The other one is when you increase the number of women on board, you see that ESG disclosures increase, so better disclosure on sustainability topics are given by the company. And we have seen that in many other ways, that increasing women in a board makes the board more socially or sustainability responsive. So that's a very strong finding, because in most of these studies, they always find the same results, even though they have changed the countries and the settings. For the financial, the results are mixed. Some of the results are very positive, especially in the latest years, that if you increase the number of women, and you can see in some of the research, they use like more than 2 women or more than a certain percentage of women, then you can see that it has a positive impact on the financial measures as well, like Tobin's Q or return on assets. So these are interesting results from the literature. So we know that it does have an effect, okay, on the company. So how should we address this issue? Because we know that this has an effect and we need to increase the diversity. But what are the ways to do it? Because corporations do not do that by themselves most of the time. So we need to figure out a way for that. Yes, mainly there are 2 different approaches here. One of them is the European approach, which is applied in many European countries to bring in mandatory quotas through regulation. So we're saying government should intervene. So that's the European approach, to increase the number of women on board, more than 30% in most of the cases, because the literature says that you need at least 3 women so that they will become more comfortable and their voice raises really in the organization. So by taking that approach, the Europe says you should make it mandatory. And there are a couple of countries that have been applying that, and some of them are really successful. The second approach, which is US-based, which is a market-based approach, says that, well, voluntary actions motivating companies with ratings and indexes that affect the cost of capital. So it says that leave it to the market, okay? Make ratings and indexes like we have in Istanbul Stock Exchange as well, that companies who have better diversity, they are in a certain sustainability index, or you can create a gender-based index and see if the value of the companies in that index raises, because the public views those companies as better. If their value increases, that means their cost of capital will be reduced. They will be seen as less risky also. And that's going to solve the problem. Then the companies voluntarily act to include more women in their boards. So that's the US-based approach. Next slide. So when we look at the quotas, Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, Norway, they have all introduced mandatory quotas. UK has a softer approach. In Turkey too, there is a recommendation, but it's not a real quota. And sometimes they put quotas, but they don't have any punishment if you don't follow the quota. So that's also a dividing factor. You can introduce a quota as the government or the stock exchange, but if you do not have any disciplinary action, if they don't obey, then it doesn't really work, okay? And other countries like Portugal, Czech Republic are considering introducing quotas. And a lot of NGOs all over Europe, one of them is like 30% Club, I heard, they are promoting bringing quotas through the system. When we look at what happens, we are seeing that in the countries where we have quotas, like France, they have increased the percentage of women on their boards, like Italy. But still, when we look at that, France, Italy, Belgium, Portugal, Germany, and Austria are above 30%. But all the other countries, we can see that most of them are below 30%. So gender balance zone, which we call 40 to 60%, is not reached. It's only reached by 2 countries, which have quotas. So that's the report. So even though there are quotas in more countries, still we are not there yet. Yeah, in the US view says that, yeah, you put these quotas, but when you put quotas, that doesn't mean that those women that get into the board are going to be effective. We know this tokenism issue, like especially it happens with family firms as well, big family conglomerates, like they put women on the board, but they are not effective. They're just there to make up the numbers. So putting quotas only by itself without trying to improve the corporate governance processes is not going to bring us the desired outcome. So we see that there is, yes, maybe 40% women on the board, but how many of them are effective? How many of them are actually working in the committees of the board, like risk committee, auditing committee, performance committee, or is there any one of them who are actually chair of the board? So if you look at those issues, raising the number by itself doesn't get us there. So that's an important issue. So the US says, sit back, you know, let corporate democracy and social pressure will do its job. And NGOs are really, really very important there, and all the stakeholders. It's also the shareholders. So if you have in your ownership structure more institutionalized investors, and if they put some pressure on the company to put more women on the board, then the companies would do it. Or other stakeholders like customers, employees, or NGOs. We have seen in our research that in some countries, NGOs are very, very effective to create a pressure on these companies. And in some other countries, like in Turkey, we see that the creditors are very effective. When banks introduce a different type of loan with a lower cost that to the companies that have a higher percentage of women, that has an effect because Turkey is a bank-based country. But in another country, I think it was Spain, NGOs were very effective. When they put pressure, it works. So the important part that we get from here is we need to use both mechanisms. Yes, we can have quotas, but we need to also work on the other mechanisms. Only raising the number does not mean you are raising the voice. So governance practices and sustainable development goals should be taught on this way. And we just don't want a woman sitting there just as a symbol. For that purpose, in our project, what we have done is we have been talking, like interviewing and making focus groups to figure out what should change so that the corporations will adapt the practices, internal practices, to make a woman climb up the ladder, basically. Next slide. And a lot of different things came up in the decision-making process. The part of these results, I'm sure Tineke is going to talk about them later on the results of our project, but one thing was striking to me was woman needs to first imagine that they will get there. Because many women that we have spoken to were saying like, they're not so eager to get there. And that's one issue with the women that we have to talk about. And they don't take enough risks, and risk-taking behavior is totally different. So we need to work on that. But also in the governance mechanisms, we have seen that some companies are bringing in very good mechanisms of promotion. Like if there is a role to promote within the company, and if some companies apply that, if you promote a man, and when there are women also available for that position, the manager needs to write a report why they didn't choose the woman. So that's effective. It's just saying that, give us our reasoning. And sometimes just for that reason, they try to create equal opportunity. So these types of interesting mechanisms makes women more visible, and it opens the road for them. Next slide. Let me get. So that's one of the internal corporate governance mechanisms that we figured out. We have found many others like paid leaves and so on, but those are very interesting results. So we see that in different cultures, different types of mechanisms work maybe better. But some of them are very common all over Europe. I can say all over Europe because in our project, as Tineke mentioned earlier, we have Mediterranean countries, we have Nordic, we have Central European. So we try to cover the different cultures and figure out what is common in them as well. Because those are the things that we need to promote. And in our ebook, we have put together our model, different factors affecting like personal factors, cultural factors, company-wide factors, and we have put them all together, and the chapters are actually designed to tell about the best practices and what works and why we have different types of applications. So in our methodology, what we have done is in-depth interviews with board members and focus group analysis, focus group studies, which we realized that and in our focus group studies and interviews, we have interviewed with both men and women because they have different points of view to share. Like many men said, we didn't know women wanted to be in those positions in Turkey. So, and if you interview with a woman, you totally get a different type of view. And so then after we gathered all the data, we have looked at we have provided a content analysis and came up with our factors. So what we see is, first of all, to be able to have a better structure, you need statements and policies in place from both the management and shareholders within the company. So shareholders, which are the actual investors of the company, should be committed to this issue and should make it seen openly that they value board diversity. Okay, management should put in place certain policies and mechanisms, such as like if you have a promotion coming up, you know, you promoted a man, why? You need to write that, and you need to and you should be encouraging women by like mentorship programs. That's also very important. If you do mentor, that was one of the most effective policies as best practice that we have seen, mentoring women to become board members within the company. So those policies and procedures should be set by the management, and we have many more of those. The second one is inside quotas. So you should include inside quotas within the company without looking at what the government or the stock exchange is asking from us. We should say certain percentage of our management team should be women, certain percentage of our board should be women, and that is important. It makes it seen very well, and it should be advertised as well. The last one is stakeholder engagement. In that, we see that NGOs, creditors, and customers are the most important ones that could put pressure. And like the companies like the fact that, you know, they become part of an NGO working relationship. So those NGOs working on the topic should be putting pressure and creating ways for companies to learn more about this. Of course, we have some more interesting findings in the book that Tineke will be talking about, and the book is already in our website, so you can take a look at them. And we have also prepared some training modules which will be open at the end of this month, that gives training about the best practices to all the board members and all the management teams that they want to be board members in the future. And actually, it's good for all of us, because when we do that, we see that we have a lot of biases, and you can figure that out, and you can see how it can be overcome through those education modules. So those are our very shortly findings of the project. But what I would like to say is, as a woman, it was very fulfilling for me to work on this project, because I am working as a dean in our school, and I'm part of the board of the university. And when I see that how rare that is in Turkey, especially, like the total number of women deans is about like 15% in Turkey, and which is a profession is like 50% women. So it is very interesting, and I see that women bring a different type of view to the boardroom, more caring, more sustainability oriented. I have seen in the discussions this is happening too. And what I always say is, especially seeing the situation today in the world in terms of environment and social problems, I think the world needs a little bit more woman point of view in our management practices. So if this project would put a little step towards that direction, I would be really very happy. Thank you very much for all of you to join us and listen to our project. So it's up to you, Tineke.
Thank you, Chanur, for your insightful presentation and for sharing your experience as a board member. As Chanur explained, I will go a little bit deeper into the findings of our research. As she explained, we have organized focus groups and in-depth interviews with board members in Belgium, Lithuania, Spain, and Turkey, so in every corner of Europe, to gain insights in any recurring needs and issues experienced by men and women who are part of a corporate board. We asked them about any factors that played a role in them becoming a board member, in any difficulties they experience on their way. We asked them about what their company does to improve gender balance in the workforce and at corporate boards specifically, and if they think those efforts are effective. And of course, we also asked them what they think their company should do more. And out of all these things, maybe let's go to the next slide. Out of our interviews and focus groups, we took some conclusions, and this is it. Now it looks maybe a little bit weird, maybe a bit hard to read, but I will show you in the next slide in a more in an overview that's easier to read. So what came out of the conversations with board members were numerous topics that could influence whether or not someone becomes a board member. Some factors affect the individual's motivation to become a board member. Other factors impact whether or not a person is nominated or accepted to the board. And yet another series of factors determines whether a person feels heard or valued as a board member. As Chanur explained, it's not only about the number, but also about their voice. So there are many factors that play a role in this. You can see in the model that we divided our findings in 4 primary categories. In blue, you can see the career-related factors. In orange, you can see the governance-related factors. In gray, we have shown the external factors, and in yellow, the gender-specific internal factors. Each of these 4 categories contains multiple factors that affect gender diversity on corporate boards. Because it's hard to read it in this round model, I will go to the next slide. So this is the same information, just written in a way that's less hard on the neck to read, maybe. So let's go over these topics one by one. So in the career-related factors, we noticed that competence is an important factor. So whether someone has the right skills for the job. We also found industry-specific experience to be a relevant factor. Family responsibilities is another one, a big one, as it's not always easy to balance family responsibilities with responsibilities at work. Some final career-related factors that we found were important are networking, because men tend to network more often than women, and whether a board member was assigned for the role or recruited. So if they applied for the job themselves, or if they were told by the company to become a board member. Next, in the category of governance-related factors, we had a look at the type, size, and ownership of the organizations. For example, research shows that women are more easily accepted as board members when the organization is a family business. And when it is a family business, they're even more easily accepted when the women are family of the family business. We also had a look at board structures and, of course, HR policies, because it is the HR policies that decide whether or not someone gets the job eventually. Organizational culture also plays a role in the openness towards minorities in the organization in general, and of course in the organization's board specifically. And then, last but not least, we also look into the financial performance. When we move on to the next group of factors, the external factors, we had a look at the educational system, as everyone learns about norms and values regarding diversity while growing up, of course. So school and education, and also on later age, training as a professional, lifelong learning is also very important. Culture also greatly impacts gender diversity on corporate boards in different ways. There we had a look at Hofstede's description of culture, where we compare the national culture of Belgium, Lithuania, Spain, and Turkey with each other to find any differences and how different cultures can explain differences in gender diversity on corporate boards. We also had a look at work-life balance. This one is very impactful, as I said before. For example, looking at work-life balance, we see that women and men experience very different issues, where women are often experience stress when combining caretaking roles at home with professional career. They often experience pressure to achieve well in both domains, which is hard to combine. It's not always easy to combine professional life and personal life when you are expected to work hard on both of them. So this causes a lot of stress in women. Men, however, they also experience stress, but in a completely different way. They are often experienced to achieve well professionally, very well, because they are the main breadwinners very often. So that lays a lot of pressure on them to do well in their professional life. That is why they work overtime more often than women, because they really prioritize the needs of their work above the needs of their families. And of course, that also causes them stress because they don't have a lot of time to spend at home, and the expectations are still there because, of course, their family expects them to come home in the evening and to still spend some time with them. So this lack of work balance also causes stress in men. When we move on to the next item, next to that, we also had a look at economic factors and, of course, legislation and policies. As Chano already explained, in the book we also have a whole book chapter on legislation and policies, explaining in great detail the effect of gender quotas on gender diversity on corporate boards. And then last but not least, we have the gender-specific internal factors. There we have motivation. That plays a big role, of course, because if you're not motivated, you will not become a board member. We also have altruism. That has a different effect on men and women. We also talk about risk behavior, as some studies show that women are less likely to take risks, and some studies show that it doesn't matter which gender you are, it's the same for both. In the ebook, we have our own research on that topic. And then there is self-efficacy, self-promotion, self-perception. Those three items belong together, I think, where we saw that, for example, women perceive themselves as less good, even when they are better sometimes. I'm not saying women are better than men, but when a woman has the same level of knowledge or experience than men, women will perceive themselves as less good compared to men. That's what I was trying to say. So that also plays a very big role in whether or not a woman is motivated to take on a role, because if they don't perceive themselves as possible future board members, they will not become board members. So I hope I did not spoil the content of the book too much yet. Of course, this presentation was meant as a way to spark curiosity and spark your interest. So on the slide, you can see the front page of our book and also our overview of our chapters, just so you know which content we tackle there. It's what I have explained, but in a more in a better way, a more detailed way. So I will ask my colleague to share the link of our platform in the chat. There on this platform, on the equalityinbusiness.eu website, you can find our ebook, you can find more information about the project, and also the e-learning modules that Chanur mentioned will appear there before the end of the month. I think there are already first versions there, but that are not ready yet. However, you can have a look at the book already. And yeah, feel free to visit the platform. Then I would like to ask you if there are any questions. Feel free to post them in the chat. You can always reach us through the platform too. There is a contact box at the bottom of the homepage, and I think some other web pages on the platform. So as promised, I will send you all and all the people who couldn't be here today the recording of this meeting along with the link to our ebook, so you can read everything at your own pace. You don't have to read the whole book. If you say I'm only interested in this part, you can do that. No worries, we will not blame you. It is a lot of information. So I don't see any questions in the chat. So I hope everything was clear, and I hope you have enjoyed this presentation. I hope you have learned something or got inspired, or you're curious about the ebook. Oh, I do see a question. In relation to external factors, how important is the support of family, partner, or children in this attempt to balance this work-life relationship? Of course, it is really important. If your family does not agree with you being a board member and spending a lot of time at work, of course, this can cause many frustrations, issues. It can cause, yeah, of course, it has an impact. So it would be best if they are standing behind you to support you in your in trying to achieve your goal.
I would like to add something on that issue. The family issues is very culturally oriented. It's different from culture to culture, how families act on this way. But the most important part is that as women, we should be able to, convince our family that they need to support us, and also the government as an external factor needs to provide mechanisms so that both parents, especially if you have children, could be working, has a busy working life and could raise a family at the same time. So it has many different parts of the issue that we have explored, that you can find some parts of it in the book, but it also has some issues for the government, and it has the cultural expectations. But our job is here as women also change the cultural expectations at the same time. So gender roles should be worked on in our.
Yes, indeed. I would also like to add that in our book we have a whole chapter on work-life balance and how you can deal with it. And I think at the end of the chapter there is a very clear overview of some advice for board members on how to arrange things at home, and also for policymakers and also for organizations. So please have a look at the ebook. I hope you enjoy reading it. And yeah, then I would like to thank every one of you for being here today, for asking questions. It's been very nice and very pleasant to present our findings to you. So thank you, And maybe we will see you at the next event, because there will be a next event, which I almost forgot to mention, at the end of the month. So maybe I can send every one of you a link with to register for the next event, along with the recording of this webinar. Thank you all, and
Thank you.
let's go for gender diversity on corporate boards.